Hey everybody, it's Bust with something a little bit different for you today. We're going to be participating in the Tarjeta eSports Draft League Season number 2. And so if what we're about to talk about in this video sounds interesting to you, if you'd like to find yourself participating in something like this, the link to the league's Discord should be down in the description below, along with a link to the Tarjeta eSports YouTube channel. And then if you're not that interested in playing, but want to follow along with all of our draft gameplay and league play, you can go over to the Tarjeta eSports channel. They'll have other people's drafts and games, matches, highlights, and such. Lots of different analysis going on over there from the remaining people in the league. And now onto the rules of the league. This is a draft league. If you're familiar with Expedition from Runeterra, Draft from Magic, or Arena from Hearthstone, we're going to be constructing limited decks to where we're shown a random selection of cards. We'll pick from those random selections to actually generate our deck. We'll talk about the rules of the draft here in just a moment, but do keep in the back of your mind we are going to be playing with 3 drafted decks in this league. There's going to be one draft at the beginning of the league that will cover what we play through the regular season and in the playoffs, and then we're going to be playing in the best of 3 format. And so as we show up to a match against an opponent, they're going to see all 3 of our deck lists. They're going to ban one of ours. We're going to ban one of theirs. And then we're going to play a best of 3 match with the remaining 2 decks. We're going to play 5 of these matches during the regular season. We're going to use a Swiss style of pairing. And so if you're not familiar with Swiss, you'll be attempted to be paired against someone with the same record. And so the first round is just random. Say we win our first round. In the second round, we should be playing against someone with 1 win. And then say we lose our second round. In the third round, we should play against someone with 1 win and 1 loss. At the end of these 4 weeks, the top cut will be made of the top 40% of the players. We have somewhere between like 20 and 25 players, and so it should be a cut to the top 8, the top 12 or so. And now onto the rules of the draft. And so, again, we're going to be drafting 3 decks. The way each of these drafts is going to look is we're going to be shown a random selection of 3 factions. Those 3 factions do include the Runeterran champions, and so you can also draft Jen, Bard, Evelyn. After we take our first faction, we're going to be shown another set of 3 factions. We'll pick a second one. That locks us into our 2-faction combo. So now that we have our 2 factions, we're going to be shown 3 random champions within those factions. And so we're going to continue that process on until we have 6 champions in our deck. There is no, I see that you have this, so we're going to show you that. It's all completely random. And so if you take a Garen as your first champion, you're no more likely to see Garen in Pack 2 or Pack 3 than you were in Pack 1. It's all completely random. There's no bucketing. There's no percentages attached to anything. Then, once we have our 2 factions, we have our 6 champions, we're just going to be shown 3 cards at random from those factions over and over and over again. And so, again, there are no bucketing. There's no saying, okay, you drafted Garen, so I'm going to show you elites. You drafted Teemo, so I'm going to show you mushroom clouds. This is all just done completely at random, and there's no difference in seeing a common as there is a rare, as there is an epic. All of the cards have the same percentage chance to be shown. They are all selected, or they're all shown to you at random to make your selection of 3 cards each time. The difference that you're going to see here, as we saw from Expedition, is that we're going to be drafting 50 cards and cutting it down to 40. And so as we used to play Expedition, you were locked into playing all of the cards that were in your deck. Sure, you may have the opportunity to trade them away later, but there was a pretty good chance that if you drafted a Mushroom Cloud into your deck, you were going to have to play it. And so now here we have the opportunity to draft 50 cards, and then each week we'll be cutting those down to 40. And that will also give us some sideboarding opportunities since we can change decks between each week. If we see that our opponent has a bunch of aggro decks and we want to sideboard in our life gain cards, we can do it. Or if something that may turn up is if a card gets nerfed or something, we may not want to include that in our deck. And so it's fairly standard. I feel like all of us are kind of familiar with the idea of drafting. Just the only differences here are you're selecting factions and you're selecting champions and you're selecting cards. There's no caps or limits to the number of each of the cards that you can draft. There's no bucketing, and then there is no artificial random modifiers on the rarity of the cards. So we now have our first deck drafted. In terms of our second and third deck, we are not allowed to duplicate regions. And so if in the first draft we took a Freylord and a Demacia, we move on to set 2. if Demacia is shown to us, we just can't take it, right? We have to draft unique sets of factions. We did have the rule in place that if you see a duplicate, you're allowed to kind of re-roll, but in general, you're not going to have access to the different factions, and there's a good chance you're just going to get stuck with something. As we've taken, 4 of the 13 factions out of the list, you're going to start getting limited in your choices. And so, with the rules out of the way, I did want to give a couple of disclaimers and then get into my strategy for this event. And so, I did want to say I did initially record an intro and then do the drafts, and then I just cut away the intro, and there's a lot of kind of choppiness in this video, and so I do apologize for that. I think I'm kind of good at children's card games first, decent at talking about them second, and then editing YouTube videos is somewhere down around 10 on my strength of skills, and so I do apologize if it's a bit choppy. And then in terms of the draft itself, the draft was done before the 3.13 patch or the knowledge of what was going to happen in the 3.13 patch. And so the 3.13 patch, if you're not familiar, that was the nerf to say Bard, Alawi, Kaisa, and then there's some nerfs to say Frozen Thralls and the Winding Light. A lot of potential impacts onto the limited format. We drafted without knowing what those changes were going to be. We accepted that they were going to hit in the middle of the league, and we just kind of rolled with it. And so as part of one of our key strategies in just drafting Bard, I think it still turns out fine, but do know that people are drafting before the knowledge of the 3.13 patch hit. And so, with that in mind, I had a few strategies that I wanted to pursue in this. And speaking of Bard, that was kind of number one. I think if Expedition was still around today, everyone would just see how effing nutty Bard would be, and it would just immediately climb to the top of the format. It just doesn't take any effort to draft a good Bard deck. You just draft Bard in a decent curve, and you're off to the races. And so I did have some concepts that I wanted to push beyond Bard. Right? If we were in kind of an ideal world, we could say pair Bard with Shurima, just because there's not as many cards. We can take advantage of the small card pool and use that small card pool to then draft more birds and Esmiths, right? If we could land on this deck that has 5 birds, 5 Esmith, and 4 Bard, off to the races. We're not losing any games. And so I don't think that we should, expound upon that too hard. I just think that Bard is the absolute strongest thing you could do in the format. And given an opportunity to draft Bard, we're going to do it. Thing number 2 is I would look towards Freylord. If you remember Freylord in Expedition, the epics are just outright bonkers. And so between Buried in the Ice, I don't think we ever lost a game we cast a Buried in the Ice in Expedition. Things like Feel the Rush, War Mother's Call, the haunted 6-mana landmark that makes flipped champions. There's just tons and tons and tons of good epics within Freylord, and you're probably going to find some of them, if not multiples of them. And so just draft Freylord is kind of option number 2 in terms of decks that I'm looking for. Deck number 3 that I'll be looking for is Poppy. And so we do want to kind of go out of our way to draft Bandle City if possible. Ideally, Bandle City with Demacia, so we can assemble kind of the Poppy Challengers Rally style deck. But Poppy is powerful enough on her own, along with cards like Conchologist and Yordle Captain, that make me really want to be in Bandle City. And so those are going to be the 3 factions we're going to go out of our way for. And with that kind of idea in mind, we're also looking to stay away from PNZ and Bilgewater. The decks in PNZ are just too linear, right? It's going to be extremely tough for us to assemble a Puffcaps deck or assemble a Kyrian Sunporker deck. It's just the concepts there are so tightly knit that I don't think we're going to find them in the density we need for a real deck. And so I don't want to be in PNZ. And then Bilgewater is just bad. All of the cards in Bilgewater are just terrible. You have to contest with too many bad cards. So we don't really want to deal with any of those. And so at its high level, ideally we'll be drafting Bard, Freylord, Bandle City. We're going to have nothing to do with PNZ and Bilgewater. And then in that kind of middle space as to where we have to do stuff we don't really want to do, the kind of ideal combinations to look for are going to be Demacia Targon. That gives you access to dragons, or it gives you access to challengers with Esmuth. We're going to look towards Demacia Shadow Isles, which gives you access to dragons or gives you access to the Dead Allies theme. If we get kind of stuck in Shadow Isles, we're just going to look to draft Viego. Viego is time and again one of the most ridiculous champions to land in a limited format, and so we're going to look towards that triangle of Demacia, Targon, Shadow Isles. The other thing that we would look towards is it's called the Overwhelm stack, right? This is a combination of Noxus, Freylord, and Shurima. And as you know, you can't really hone in on the specific strategies like we mentioned with P and Z. You can't draft the Sun Disk. You can't draft a lot of these linear strategies. Just drafting Overwhelm works. And so you can assemble a pretty reasonable Overwhelmy style deck, just putting in Overwhelm units, combat tricks, and a good curve. And so if we could kind of like tier off what we're trying to do, tier 1 is Bard, tier 1.5 is Freylord, tier 2 is Bandle City, tier 3 is going to be the Demacia combos or the Overwhelm combos, and then down at like tier 9 is where we're going to find P and Z and Bilgewater. And so, with those concepts in mind, let's go ahead and get ourselves into these drafts. All right, so here we go. Draft number 1. Let's go ahead and jump on in. Let me push the button. All right, and sweet. Bard is one of the big champions I was hoping to pick up. You know, we want to have Bard plus anything. I'm looking to actually pick up Bard, Demacia, and Freylord, and then we can kind of go from there. I like the triangle of things you can do with Demacia being between Demacia, Shadow Isles, and Targon. And then I like Freylord just for the epics, but then Bard is just the absolute monster. I think this is just, of course, going to be absolutely bonkers out here in this draft mode. And so for the second champion set, like I'm leaning towards the Freylord. I was really hoping to pair Bard up with just a bad faction so that we could save the good factions for other things. But I think this is probably okay to just go ahead and pick up the Freylord here. My problems with like Shadow Isles is the units are all bad and you try to kill them all off. And then the deal with the Targon is that there's just not a lot of good units in here. And so I think the Freylord will be okay. I was hoping to save it for someone, again, with like a bunch of epics in it or something, or save Freylord so we can just drive in their epics later, but kind of is what it is here. So as far as these go, I'm expecting to pick up at least one copy of Feel the Rush, so I'm really looking towards champions that have Overwhelm, and then we're going to stack every Bard that comes in. So here between Sejuani and Tryndamere, both have Overwhelm. I'm just going to go with the Sejuani. She lets us interact and is a little bit cheaper. Here's Bard, super easy take. On to the next one, same kind of deal. I'm not that interested in Anivia. It's either going to be Udyr or Tryndamere, and I'm going to lean towards Tryndamere just because of the Feel the Rush factor. And so we can go ahead and smash him in. Bard is an easy take. And last one, man, I was really hoping we get to pick up 4 Bards, but I guess we can't complain. If it's only going to be 3 Bards, that's not the end of the world. And here, the same kind of setup. I'm just going to lean in onto the Tryndamere. And so, as we get into the draft stages here, I'm really going to be looking to keep our curve cheap. We're going to have fairly decent late game. We've already got Sejuani and Tryndamere. We're going to pick up something like a Feel the Rush or a War Mother's Call or Buried in the Ice, any of just those real big ones. And so it's the bottom end of our curve that we're worried about. And, excuse me, also looking to just pick up some card draw if anything turns itself up. But with these, I feel like the Feral Mystic is a little weak, so I'm just going to lean into the Hearthguard and just kind of keep those things in mind. Here's something interesting we can consider is Catalyst to the Aeons. Just looking for a big ramp deck, as you would see in Constructed with like Trundlemere, but I'm not thinking that that's going to be necessary with our Bards. And so I'm just going to pick up the Troll Chant. Fantastic early game play. Same kind of deal here. If you're not familiar with Expedition, I always loved having one copy of Rhyme-Tusk Shaman in every Expedition deck. Harsh Winds is extremely powerful, but I'd rather have our first Shaman than our first Harsh Winds. All right, Howling Abyss. This is one of these big super epics that I'm talking about in terms of Freylord. It doesn't work fantastically with Bard, but we'll deal with that, right? This is just one of these ultra powerful matchup winners. And so I'm happy to add in a copy here. Oh, Oh man, the epics continue. The epics continue. This is exactly why I was talking about wanting to keep our curve low, because we are heavily incentivized to come up here and pick things up like this. Now, I'm actually going to go with the buried in the ice in this one. Feel the Rush is, of course, fantastic, but it doesn't play that well with Bard. And so I'm going to let this one slip for the moment and then just pick up the buried in the ice. If this was like any other just kind of rando card, we would just lean towards the Feel the Rush, but I feel like Buried in the Ice is just probably the most powerful card in the format after Bard. Okay, Bird, very easy take. I would love to just have a big stack of Birds and Esmiths. Very easy addition to our deck. Now, like, we're going to have to, again, like, focus on the early game a little bit. Ice Shard helps with that to a degree, right? If you take a peek at our curve, we have 1-1, 1-2, and so we might just need a little bit of something to interact with in the early game, and we can always cut this if that's what it comes down to. Avarosian Sentry is super on point. It's cheap. It's some card draw, exactly what we're looking for here. Easy, easy take. Esmith is another super easy take. Tusk Speaker, exactly what we're looking for. Early game plays, gives us something to do, has Overwhelm for all of our Bard additions. Super strong. Okay, not super interested in any of these. None of these are probably going to make the cut. I'm going to lean towards the Augur of the old ones. Since it already has Overwhelm, we might be able to hit the Beholds if we're going to play 2 Tryndamirs and Buried in the Ice, but I don't suspect this is going to make the cut. But out of all of those, I think it's our best option. These cards here are just trash. We're stuck with Frozen and Fear. It's not going to make the cut, but we're never playing the Troop or the Snacks. Okay, a little bit weak out here. Continuing on, the Alpha Wildclaw, again, a great unit. Nice Overwhelm late game style play. Okay, so much expensive. I'm so glad we at least picked up a little bit of early game because our curve is a bit of a hot mess at this point. But Entomb is a fantastic interactive spell. You don't have tons of interactivity in Freylord only. We would prefer this to be Three Sisters, but if Three Sisters never turns up, then we're going to be glad to have it. Okay. Avarosian Trapper is fine. It's just a little cheaper than the Babbling Bjerg. I don't feel like we're going to need card advantage in a deck like this. And I do want some card draw, right? I'm not opposed to playing Babbling Bjerg. It can actually come out here and draw our Sejuanis and our Tryndamirs, but it's just a little bit more on the expensive end of the spectrum. And so the Trappers, again, help us with our curve. This is actually a pretty close one. I'm never taking Fury of the North, but this is coming down to do we want Avalanche or the Flash Freeze? And I'm leaning towards Flash Freeze. It's tough to pull off, like particularly strong Avalanches. It's kind of easy to read into. And I think the Flash Freeze, well, I'm not entirely certain how it's going to handle in this format to where everything is a little bit higher power level with all the epics running around. I think it's going to give us just that little touch of interactivity better than the Avalanche. Okay, everyone's favorite Blighted Ravine turning up. I don't think we want it. It feels just kind of like a non-bow to be playing Bard cards and curving Bird into Esmith and then playing Blighted Ravines. I think the Kindly Tavern Keeper is right on point with what we need to give us a little bit of board stall as the chimes get going. All right, second Avarosian Trapper, fairly easy take out of these. The Tall Tales, not playable in our deck, and we don't have any combos with the Maiden. We don't have Plunders, we don't have Tufts even, we don't have Regenerates. Trappers right on point. Cool, more Birds, easy. Cool, more Esmith, easy. That's how you do it, right? That's the easy way to figure it out. We've got 2 Esmith and 2 Bird at this point. Not bad. It'd be sweet if we could get like 6 of each of them. But here, very happy to add in a unit with some interactivity. It's just another combo with our Bard. Very nice addition. Ooh, Bird, easy. Y'all are learning, aren't you? You see Bird, you take it. Easy, easy stuff. Tough Speaker is fine, though. Again, he has Overwhelm. He's an early play. Sounds good. Now, this is an interesting one. We can pick up the Avarosian Outriders. We're going to have a pretty easy path towards this Freylord Allegiance. The only downside, if you will, is we have currently 3 copies of Bird, 2 copies of Esmith, and 3 copies of Bard. And so, as we played Expedition, I didn't really like going over 6. That would be like 6 off-faction cards in a 36-card deck. That's fairly close here at 8, but I think I'm just going to take this Kindly Tavern Keeper. I think it's going to be a little bit more reliable, and I think reliability is probably the name of the game in this deck, right? I still feel that Bard is just the most broken thing that we can do in this format. And just given enough time, Bard's going to end all the games. And so the Outriders, I think we can pass on here. Okay, not going to play any of these. We, of course, don't have a Frozen Thrall deck together, so let's just move in with the Fury of the North. Probably won't play it, but we'll see how it pans out. And now, do we feel like we even need a card like Feel the Rush, right? This is the world we live in today. Is our deck good enough to just not play Feel the Rush? And I think I'm wanting one copy. If we can kind of like look at the list, I know it's a little hard to see and it's kind of new to you, so it's hard to kind of manage in your brain piece. I feel like for our top end, if we're looking to say just play one Sejuani, one Howling Abyss, two Tryndamirs, one Buried in the Ice, like I don't feel like I need any more expensive cards, and I'm leaning towards just taking the Harsh Winds here. But there's no denying the extreme power level of this, and I think where I'm kind of standing is like if we could get another Buried in the Ice to turn up, then I would just immediately move away from Feel the Rush. I don't think we have to. I don't think it's super likely for that to happen, and so I'm leaning towards just picking up the Harsh Winds again, so we can just have a little bit more interactivity. Because we're just going to have so many stats. I feel like Feel the Rush is just going to be like a win more card in this deck, and so. That's okay. This is hard. This hurts. I'm just going to take the Harsh Winds here. I don't entirely feel like that was correct, but I don't feel like it's just like too much expensive stuff when you don't have the ramp. Okay, so here we're never playing Faces of the Old Ones, right? We didn't design our deck to do the ramp thing. The Troll Scavenger is pretty weak. But Wolf Rider is like more expensive. I don't think we're ever going to activate these Wolf Riders, and just having more 2-drops should be something to chase after. And so ideally we won't have to play this Troll Scavenger, but at the end of the day, if we have to, I'm not going to be super upset since it is a 2-drop. Here, pretty easy Elixir of Iron, one of the premier combat tricks. War Mother's Call, right in that same boat as Feel the Rush. I just don't think we need the expensive cards, and then it's just not as good in this style of deck, right? I would rather be pulling out champions, and if we're not taking Feel the Rushes, then I probably just don't want the War Mother's Call. Icevale Archer, again, it's a premier 2-drop, though. Nice addition to our deck. Revna is kind of interesting. If you're talking about picking up a win more card, I think Revna is is right on track with that, as to where we should just have enough stats and the card draw shouldn't matter too much. I think I'm just going to go with the Inner Beast here to have a combat trick. We could have had a kind of interesting ramp deck if we wanted to go down that path, to where we could have had 2 Feel the Rushes. We passed like 3 ramp cards at this point and 2 Blighted Ravines, but I'm pretty happy with how this has gone. I think our power level here is much higher than just doing the ramp stuff and focusing in on Bard. Okay, not super interested in any of these. I'm going to pick up the Scarmother Virna here just as another Overwhelm unit. As we always ask ourselves the question, how do I either overwhelm, elusive, or rally through this game? Adding in the overwhelms is what we want at the top end. So we probably have enough. I just don't think those other cards are going to make the cut. Omen Hawk, great addition. Very easy take with that one. Super, super strong. And here, Mighty Poro is a great 3. Just it fits the bill. With a single +1/+1 on this thing, he's going to do bonkers things. Very glad to pick up the Overwhelms. Here, pretty easy Stalking Wolf. It's a nice interactive unit. We're never playing Poro Snacks. We don't want Ember Maidens. Nice little addition. Now, here's the thing. Like, I didn't stop and talk about these Udyr cards. Things like Shaman's Call. We took the one, the Inner Beast, as a way to generate a spell. But I don't think we're going to need these. Like, the big, like, selling point to the Udyr cards is Overwhelm. And if you look at our top end, we already have Tryndamere, Sejuani, Scarmother Virna, Augur the Old Ones, Alpha Wildclaw. Like, I went out of my way to pick up these Overwhelm cards. And so I think this would be like a nice safety valve, right? If we just have a bunch of expensive, non-overwhelming style units. If we got stuck with a bunch of like Anivias or something, then it would be okay. But I'm just going to go with the Rhymefang Wolf here. Just a reasonable interactive unit. Since we don't need the Udyr cards. All right, Averrosion Sentry, love it. Again, it's 2-drop, draws cards, exactly what we need. Over in here, I think we want more Entombs. Like, I'm never playing Troll Gifts. I just went on about Shaman's Call. I don't want to play Entomb, but if we don't find any Three Sisters with these 7 more picks, then we'll be happy that we at least have access to it. Hey, look at this. It's Esmuth. Easy. Life doesn't get easier than that. Here, we're not going to play any of these, but the only realistic option is They Who Endure. Easy take for us. And this is the place where a Babbling Bjerg is fine. I don't think it'll make the cut. We already have a bunch of 4-drops in our 3 copies of Bard, but if we feel like we need some value, he might make it. All right, Sentry, beautiful, beautiful. Everything we're looking for has come together here. The birds, the Esmuths, the Sentries, the Bards, exactly what I wanted to get out of this deck. So here, going with the Entomb, don't care about that other stuff. The Scarthane Stefan is probably the only playable here. He works reasonably well with Bard, and then he can get into combat and survive and grow. But I think, like, with this format, let me see. Let's check our 3s real quick. We have 1 Marksman, 2 Trappers, 2 Kindly Tavern Keepers, 1 Mighty, 1 Rangfang Wolf. Our 3s are very good. We're never going to play this Stefan. I was going to say, I don't know how this works if we can alter our decks each week, but having access to Avalanche in a sideboard kind of setting could be pretty useful. All right, Tusk Speaker, very easy. And that is that. So our first deck, it came together pretty well. Again, like everything I was looking for. The birds, the bards, the Esmuthus, they all got here. The big-time epics, they showed up. This is a really, really powerful collection of cards that we have here. The only downside, in my opinion, with this deck is I would have loved to have had Three Sisters turn up. It didn't. It didn't make its way here, but I think we have enough good stuff otherwise to not really have to worry about that, and I think we have a real contender with this one. Okay, so here is the deck. I think this is probably the easiest way I could come up with to show the entire thing on the screen. There are a couple cards down at the bottom. We're probably going to be playing them with at least the Skarmother Virna, but this is for the most part the entirety of our deck. And so as we're coming into the deck building, again, note that Bard doesn't start doing chimes until you've hit 3 mana gems. Harsh Winds now costs 5 mana, but otherwise I think the remainder of the deck is unnerfed between when we drafted it. And so what I'm going to look to do here is basically just kind of run through and cut out what I don't think they're unplayable, but they're cards that we're not going to necessarily want in a deck. And so things like Frozen in Fear are going to immediately come out. I'm going to cut the Ice Shard and Avalanche just because we're not really looking to start off with these, although if we're going against a really aggro-heavy lineup, we could see those stay. And I'm not going to start with 3 copies of Entomb. I'm going to cut Entomb down to 1 copy and then see where that gets us. And so that's going to get us 3, 4, 5 cuts right from the start. We're going to need 5 more additional cuts after that. And then we can take out some of these cards. Like, I don't want to be playing Troll Scavenger, and so this will be a fairly easy removal. As we move up here into expensive land, I do kind of struggle with some of this, right? I don't think we're going to want to play They Who Endure, but we do need these Overwhelms to actually come in and close out the game. I don't want to solely rely on Tryndamere and Sejuani. And so I feel like we'll probably be hanging on to Alpha Wildclaw and then bringing cuts to Augur of the Old Ones and then Skarmother Virna. And then we'll see where that leaves us. And so that should have been about 7 cuts or so. So let's switch back over to the client, take those out, and see where it gets us. And so Buried in the Ice. Oh, to see Buried in the Ice, it's so exciting. All right, They Who Endure is gone. Skarmother Virna's gone. Augur of the Old Ones, you are gone. 2 Entombs. We'll keep 1, right? This is the only removal that we have in our deck, and so we may want to keep 1 copy of Entomb, but this is a fairly safe removal if we need to. Frozen in Fear is gone, and then we can come up here, Ice Shard, Avalanche, and our Troll Scavenger. And so that gets us in like a pretty decent spot. We're going to need to make 1 more cut. We do have a handful of sideboarding options. Again, if we do show up against a aggro deck of sorts, if they're really loaded up on their Noxus aggro style things, but I think will be pretty okay. And then we do have a decent balance between units and spells, but I think we're going to want to keep our interactivity with our spells, and we're probably not going to want to bring any of our spells back in, right? We cut out the Ice Shard, Avalanche, Frozen in Fear, 2 copies of Entomb. I could see potentially wanting to bring in a second copy of Entomb, but it is quite expensive. I think if we're looking at like opposing decks kind of similar to this, where they have a bunch of stuff like Tryndamere and Sejuani at the top end, then we might be kind of interested in adding that in. But as the kind of general stance of this deck, I don't think that that's where we want to be. And so our curve, how does it look? I think with well, this has our spells and units merged together, but our 2-drop count, I probably don't want to mess with it too much, but let's see where we stand. I think it's fine. The Tavern Keepers are fine. Babbling Bjerg is a nice card with Bard. I'm kind of looking at these mid-rangey, expensive things for something to take out, and I'm not super happy about any of those. So let's see. I'm kind of leaning towards things like the Avarosian Trapper. It just doesn't work that well with Bard, right? As we're shuffling the Yetis into our deck, it's going to kind of mess up the Chime theme. But it's probably powerful enough to want to hang on to. It's just feeling like our weakest play, though, right? I want to hang on to all of our unit boosters, our birds, our Esmithus, our Omen Hawk. I want to hang on to all of our card draw to punch through the Chime themes. I like the Frostbites, given that we have the 2 challengers in the Stalking Wolf and the Frostbite Wolf. Like leaning towards, I think this is where it has to go, is our choice is going to be the Marksman, the Trapper, or the Tavern Keeper. And like my thoughts with these is I think the Marksman is kind of weak, but our deck is kind of lacking in interactivity. And so I think I do want it to stay, whether or not that's just like spiking off a Teemo or cleaning up a value block. I think he's good. And then I look at Kindly Tavern Keeper and I'm just like, well, we're playing Bard, right? If the game goes long, we're just going to win. And so if we could push the game to go longer, then the Tavern Keeper is probably going to be fine. And that's going to push me up here to taking out this Trapper. And so that does get us to 40. Now that like I stop and consider these Trappers a little bit more, I'm pretty interested in just cutting another one. And then putting the second Entomb back into our deck just to make sure that we have some removal spells. And so I think that's where I'm going to go. Our 3-drop count still looks okay. Like it's not super high, right? We just have the 2 Cavern Keepers, the Mighty Poro, and the Rangfang Wolf, so we have 4. But I don't think it's that big of a deal to lose out on those. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut out the Trapper. We're going to add back in the Entomb. And that's going to do it. That's going to be our new deck. Let me update the name so we can save this properly. Copy it back over to the old website. Well, Riot disagrees with that. But nonetheless, I think that's going to be where we're good with this deck. And this is what I honestly suspect we're just going to see banned every time, right? I don't feel like they're going to let us play the Bard Tryndamere deck very often. And this is just going to be the first one to go, especially as we're looking at like our Kato the Arm combo and our I guess I could see our Poppy deck getting the ban, but having this full combo of 3 Esma, 3 Bird, 3 Bard, aside with all of these powerful Freylord cards, I suspect this one's going to get the ban every time. But, you know, maybe we'll get to have some fun one day and get to play with this one. All right, on to draft number 2. Let's see who turns up here. And so we've already drafted Freylord, but I'm very happy to draft either Bandle City or Shurima. My kind of ideas with these two are with Bandle City. It would have been fantastic if we could have just paired that up with Bard, with the idea being we're going to just minimize the number of cards in the pool to maximize our ability to hit good ones. That mainly being Poppy, Bird, Esmuth, and additional copies of Bard. But, you know, we already got our Bard, we got our Freylord, we're happy with that. I'm happy enough to come in here and just jump into Bandle City and see what turns up next. I was kind of hoping that we would either land on something like Demacia or Noxus. I'm just staying super, super far away from both Bilgewater and PNZ. Now, that does give us the option here. I'm not like super certain how I feel about this in Draft Pack 2. If this was in Pack 3, we could just go ahead and shoot for the PNZ and look to see if we can't assemble some of the Boom Baboon package. And that's what I'm, kind of feeling is like I'd like to keep Demacia up so we can try and find Demacia as a base in pack 3. I just feel really happy about the majority of the Demacia pairings, but PNZ sucks, right? There's not a ton that you can do with PNZ, and so I'm kind of at a loss as to how to take these. I think, given that Bandle City is just strong enough on its own, that we don't have to worry about too much of PNZ's badness, but it is really going to like diminish the quality of our draft. I think I'm still just going to go ahead and go for it. Oh man, that's tough. It's like I'm imagining just all of the Boom Baboons of the world coming together and working. But let's just go Demacia. This is going to be the safe one. We're going to try and stack in every Poppy that we can find. Okay, there's Poppy. Easy take with her. I'm not. There's a couple of different ideas with how you can get these Bandle City decks going. I feel like we can look towards the good champions in Poppy. We'll stack as many of her as we can. Then the next thing we can look towards is cards like Conchologist and Pokestick, the cards that are just generally good. And then we may shoot for a couple wild cards, right? We might shoot for Yordles. We might shoot for the fairies, but I don't feel like we have to. And we can just kind of draft 5 or 6 of the cards, and if it doesn't come together, just let it go. But none of these champions really push me towards any direction. You do have the multi-faction option with Tristana, but I don't want to chase that down with Demacia. If we're going to go after Tristana, we want to be in Ionia or we want to be in Noxus so that we can give her Overwhelm or Elusive. I'm just going to go with the generally good Ziggs here. All right, Poppy, very easy. That's what we're here for. Hey, what's this? It's Poppy. Take it. Have y'all learned how this works? You see Poppy, you take it. And so here we're going to go with Fiora. There's not enough of the 6 cost matters kind of themes to go after with Lux. Fiora, she's not going to be great here, right? We're not going to have a lot of combat options, but I just can't imagine too many scenarios where we actually get to activate the Lux ability. And so we'll pick up the Fiora here, and then we're going to be playing go wide strategies with Bandle City. That's kind of their thing, and so Garen will be a fine final champion for us here. Okay, so it's we're going to be looking to craft either a handful of different things, right? If you think of the kind of Poppy Bard decks in Constructed as to where you're using Poppy and Bard to grow your challengers. I'd be very happy to chase after challengers because they're just generally good, right? There's not a lot of bad things to say about them. They're all reasonably well statted. They all let us interact with our opponents. And so that's kind of like a pillar of what we're going to be chasing after. And then we do want some of these like smaller style units like Stone Stackers so that they can also take advantage of the Poppy boosts. And so this is a pretty easy Stone Stackers. I'm leaning towards, if the Yordles deck turns up, maybe we go after it. But at the end of the day, I wanted to kind of get those two ideas forward in terms of what's going to happen here. Now, this one's actually really tough, right? I feel like there's a couple of different things we can do with these drafts, and to where in Expedition you had to play everything, right? You had to play all of your cards, and so if you took a pack that had a really good card and a really bad one, you were just stuck with that really bad one unless you got to the point to where you could trade it away. But here we only have to play 40 of our 50 cards, and so it's like I kind of feel like we can take cards like Gleaming Lantern, and then attempt a high roll. If we end up with like 5 or 6 fairies cards and then we can't play them, that's okay, right? We can just cut them out of our deck. But I think Vanguard Sergeant is just way too powerful to be passing up. His has been a limited all-star throughout the course of history, and regardless of where our deck falls, the Vanguard Sergeant's going to be good. So we might kind of regret passing on this Gleaming Lantern, but I don't think we're going to be upset having the Vanguard Sergeant. Here with these, it's like some low tier fairy and Yordles cards. Not super excited. Senna's pretty strong. The quick attack is good. If you can give her Challenger, that's great. Not too worried about it. Oh man, we did have the options with the fairies. I think we can probably take the Face Sprout and then just see, right? We aren't like super into any strategies, and if the fairies come together, I think we'll be pretty happy with it. The Face Sprout is something that we could consider just playable on its own. Given that picking up a Papercraft Dragon is not the worst thing to be doing. All right, I'm going to go with the Bandle Commando out of these. I don't imagine us actually playing Senna, right? We have a copy. If our curve needs it, we'll play her, but she's not going to be synergistic with anything we're doing. Whereas the Bandle Commando is Yordle. It generates phase, and the Alcats, it generates multi-faction cards. There's a lot of things coming out of these Bandle Commandos that can be quite useful. Okay, so this is going to be like a real telling one of the draft. I think we can punch in with the Grandfather Fae. Right, the Egghead Researcher is the other card I'm looking at here. This is just like a super premier limited card. And that it's so good early and good late, right? It generates basically a 5+ cost card and can come down and interact early, but I think we're going to be good to go after this fairies theme. I'm not feeling too upset about missing out on the initial one, but card's just so super strong. And again, if at the end of the day, if we only have like these 4 fairies cards, we can just not play them. Here's all around good stuff in Pokestick, pretty easy take. With these, which one is the Bandle Tellstones? I don't think we're interested. Right, good, creates heroic refrains, contraptions, or keeper's verdicts. We can let that go. We'll take Cythria, probably not going to play her, but if we end up on the more aggro end of the spectrum, she may make the cut, and that's where we're at right now. We only have one 5-cost card in our deck. I suspect at some point we'll pick up, not necessarily Jarvan, but there's a lot of expensive Demacia stuff that would work out quite nicely. Here, I'm just going to go with the back-to-back. Very powerful combat trick we definitely want one copy of. And here's something I was curious if we could pull off, is the Vanguard Bannerman. What is our faction count at this point, right? We have Cythria. Like, if we want to really cut out the Bandle City, like, we don't even have to play Ziggs, right? We could have, like, back-to-back as 1, Garen's 2, Poppy is 5, Vanguard Sergeant 6, 7, 8, 9 with Cythria. So we have like a quarter of a deck at this point if we want to go all in on the Vanguard Sergeants. I think I'm going to let that go. Like, if we'd seen a Challenger or something up to this point, I think that would be all right, but we haven't seen any of the real, like, Demacia build-around stuff. I think I'm just going to continue to go in with the Fairies, right? We have another Fae over here in the Blast Cone Seedling, and just stay on point that way. All right, so Sharp Sight's good. Premier Combat Trick, pretty easy take out of these. With the next one, I'm leaning towards the Swiftwing Lancer. We do need to pick up a bit of late game, and this Challenger unit is quite good. All right, so more along the same lines. Laurent Bladekeeper is okay, and then these other cards are kind of turdy. The Laurent Bladekeeper can be a little bit important in terms of boosting up Poppies, since Poppy may need a little bit of help to grow the rest of our board. But like I think he's going to be the take. I don't think we'll ever play the Vanguard Sergeant or the Minion to where he has some options here. Conchologist, good stuff. Very easy take. Hey, it's another Conchologist. You guys play these in Constructed, right? It's pretty good there, pretty good here. Okay, we got our first Rally in Relentless Pursuit. I would prefer this be Golden Aegeus, but we're not going to be complaining about the rallies. We got to pick some of them up. Very glad to have our first one. And now I think there is a point of discussion between Cythria and the Brightsteel Protector, but we haven't seen too much top end at this point, and we're going to be upset if we don't have any good stuff. Like, I'd be happy to get the Swiftwing Lancer out of our deck. I don't want to play Laurent Bladekeeper. We're really looking for, like, Cythrias, Genvivis, even things like Tiana. And we need to have something. And Cythria is a pretty powerful something, right? With this AoE unit boosting strategy. Plays quite well with the fairies. It hurts to pass the Brightsteel, but I think Cythria is just too good. Another interesting one here. The Petricite Broadwing is the stronger of the two. I think Yordle Smith would be nice if we had the Challengers, but we got to get the chicken and the egg thing going on. We got to get the Challengers before we get in the Yordle Smiths. Okay, another Sharp Sight. Not a bad set. Like, I saw the Tellstones was kind of interesting, but I think we'll go with the Sharp Sight here, get some more Premier Combat Tricks. This is a fairly easy Buster Shot. Not sure if we'll play it. We don't have any Tristanas in our deck, so it's a fairly slow removal spell. But we haven't seen any like single combat kind of cards as to where we would really prefer to have them. And I don't feel like I want to play the Larnt Bladekeeper we already have. And so let's just pick up the removal just to be on the safe end of the spectrum. Vanguard Sergeant's never passing. Very easy take. Brightsteel Protector makes his way here as well. Pretty easy amongst some turds. The gold amongst the it's the nugget of corn amongst the turds. There we go. It's slipping me. I finally found it. All right, not playing any of these, but Quicken is the most likely to play. Onto these, I don't think we'll ever be able to activate the Lieutenant. Let's see. We don't even have any dragons in our deck at this point, do we? He has a reasonable 2-drop, but we already have about 1 million. We'll just take the Investigator. We have one back-to-back. Probably won't play it, but it's worth keeping note of. Golden Aegis, very easy. And another Yordle Captain. This is another kind of one of the premier just generalists. Having these unit stat boosting things is quite good. Would much rather have Yordle Captain than Larnt Bladekeeper. Okay, and so this one's kind of interesting. We haven't picked up too much more fairy stuff since the beginning of the draft, but it doesn't take too much for it to pop off. And in large part, with the way our deck has come together, I'm really just interested in growing our units, right? Just having stuff to put on the board and then growing them with Poppy, growing them with Vanguard Sergeants, growing them with our Yordle Captains. And so the Battledeers should be fine. The question is, do we want a card like Friendship to protect our Poppy? And I think she should be okay as well, right? We've already got two copies of Sharpsight, and so I don't feel the need to pick up a card like Friendship. Let's go with the Battledeers. Now, do we ever play 2 back-to-backs? Again, our 2-drops look pretty good. I don't want expensive cards like Tenor of Terror. Just down to the combat trick aspect of back-to-back. And this is, I think we do need just like a little bit of top end here. So we'll go ahead and add that one to the deck. I got surprised. I got bamboozled by the Arena Kingpin. we'll let him stay. This is a nice combat trick with the Royal Decree. This is a way to say like give Senna challenger. Again, I don't think we're gonna play Senna, but it's nice having a combat trick plus interactivity all wrapped up in one card. Okay, Yordles in Arms. We're not gonna play you today. It's always a valid question in this style of deck, and it's still going to be our take here, anyways. But with 2 Vanguard Sergeants, I don't think it's going to be a necessity. Okay, so here we're never playing standalone. We already have a Buster Shot. Probably not playing Primal Strength though, and so I'll just go ahead and pick up another Buster Shot. Fairly weak set for the past 2 or 3 picks. Here, I guess we can take Mini T. I can't imagine we play any of these other 2. All right, things are turning up a little bit. We gotta we gotta get the good cards back. So coming out of these, we're not going to play Kelp Maidens ever. The Green Fang Warden or the Challenger are both fine. We don't have any combos with the Green Fang Warden, but we're probably also just not going to play the Cavalier. And so the Warden, he may be like a 40th card in this deck. The Scout units do get quite strong if you get to boost their stats, and so maybe he gets in here at the end, but I'm not really feeling it. Wow, these cards have been turds. I'm just going to pick up the Mirror Mage. I don't think we'll ever play it, but it's expensive, and so that counts for a bit of something here. All right, Face Sprouts on theme. When we already got all these cards. Game. I mean, do we ever play a card like Yordles in Arms? I don't think so. I don't think we'll play multiples. I'm not playing 3 copies of back-to-back though. The Tenor of Terror does work in a deck like this, but like it does help us go wide. I just don't feel like we're ever going to play it. I'll take the Yordles in Arms. I mean, I could see the Yordles in Arms working, right? If we're out here generating fairies, we can kind of pick and choose the way our factions land. We have a couple of off-faction things like the Ziggs, so maybe it works out. It's not super happy with that here. All right, I'm going to pick up the Keeper's Verdict. Again, we don't have anything like single combat. We don't have any concerted strikes. This is a kind of catch-all removal spell, and we already have 1 copy of Quicken. Something. Give me something, game. All right, well, the Heroic Refrain is an okay combat trick. I just don't think we'll play an Ardent Tracker. I mean, I guess maybe we could actually play Hidden Pathways just as a draw 2 for 4. It's not spectacular, but it may make it. don't think we're going to have the elites to ever make the tracker relevant, right? And we don't have any cataclysm combos with it either. What's our combat tricks, right? We have the 2 sharp sights, the 1 3 cost +2/+2 thing. That's it. And then the 2 back-to-backs. That's plenty. But man, I can't imagine we play the hidden pathways though. All right, we'll take the heroic refrain. Finally, a card that isn't garbage. Excuse me, we'll take the Yordle Smith pretty easily. Gleaming Lantern to add to the fairies. Welcome aboard. And then what do we think about Cythria 10? I can't imagine we ever play it. This is like, man, I was hoping some of the more like high-powered epics would turn up, just the ones that cost like 8. 10 mana is a pretty big ask, and so I think we're stuck just taking the Strafing Strike here. It's still reasonable. Captain Erika, though, that's the 8-cost card I can get behind. Just finally pick up this Premier Removal spell. It's arguable if it's better than the Conchologist, but we already have 2 Conchologists, and so I'm just going to make sure we have the big removal spell play. All right, Double Tap makes an appearance, but as a big removal, but Ranger's Resolve fits right on board with what we're trying to do here with our Go Wide theme. And the last one, kind of close, but I think we would rather just have the Bandle Commando. Again, it helps with the Go Wide kind of thing. All right. Okay, so deck number 2. This kind of came together good, came together bad, right? So in terms of the good, we did hit a lot of the unit boosting cards, right? And our curve looks pretty good in terms of working with the unit boosting, right? So we have the Poppy, the Garen. In the unit space, we have the 2 Vanguard Sergeants, the Yordle Captain, along with the Cythria. And so we have all of the tools we need to really grow our board and then take advantage of that grown board. The second piece of that, though, is our removal's not great, and the synergies we are looking to build up didn't exactly come together, right? I was wanting a bunch of challengers to go with this unit boosting. All we landed on was the Petricide Broadwing. I would want some of the fairies cards, and we ended up with the 2 Bandle Commandos, the Blast Cone Seedling, the 1 Grandfather Fae, the 1 Gleaming Lantern, the 2 Fae Sprouts. That's kind of like enough to be a small synergy, but not like big and really huge and wonderful. And then in terms of these other things, like did we hit enough multi-faction to make something like Buster Shot work? Probably not. So we're not going to look to probably play Buster Shot, probably not going to play Yordles in Arms. The downside to, say, cutting out Buster Shots is it leaves our interactivity down to basically just a Strafing Strike and a Royal Decree. Not really going to play Keeper's Verdict in our Triple Poppy deck, and then we didn't find any Concerted Strike style cards. And so I think with this one, the first thing that we're going to come in and look to do is just take out some of these expensive units and then these expensive spells and then see where that takes our deck. And so let me switch back to the game real quick. I think that's a fairly easy one to kind of manage and get going. So we're going to come down here. Mirror Mage, Mini T, not going to make it. Keeper's Verdict can come out. Both Yordles in Arms can go. Happy enough with these. The 2 Buster Shots can go. Not going to play Senna. I know that this is like kind of in the right space to fit those in, sort of, but man, that just gets us down to actually just 1 card away. And so let me at least pull the deck back up and see where that goes. I'll keep in the back of my brain piece that we have access to a Senna, but I just don't think that we're going to want to have her as our as one of our 3-drops. So. Wow, yeah, that I wasn't exactly expecting that to cut us down to just 41 cards, but that got us pretty close to being there. And so I think our kind of unit count looks good. The things that start to strike me as being like good, I should say, with this deck are our combat tricks look fine, right? With the 2 back-to-backs, the Royal Decree, Heroic Refrain. I'm kind of happy with this package. I'm happy with the Ranger's Resolve. It's just like, where does this last cut want to come? I think, as we cut our deck down to this space, we are just like stuck with the fairies, right? I'm not amped about this Gleaming Lantern and the 2 Fae Sprouts, but it kind of is what it is. We're just going to have to hope to get like enough little values out of those, but there are a bunch of good fairies to just generate, right? If we come out and generate the elusives or whatever, then we're not going to be super upset about it. And so I think that's okay. The cards I'm looking at now are, I don't want to really cut any of our 2-drops or our 1-drop, our single 1-drop, if you will, given that we want to hit these curves that really function with Poppy. And so I think all of these 2s are going to stay. And then it's a matter of, say, do we really want a Green Fang Warden? We don't have tons of combos with it, right? We don't have Cataclysm, we don't have Elites, we don't have any barrier combos. We can't give it Challenger. There's just like not a lot that this guy does. And that's my immediate thought for removal. I was thinking while we were drafting, it would be okay to actually just like cut Fiora or Ziggs if we want. I think they're going to be more powerful than the 3-drops that we already have. And so they're going to get to stay. I would have also been happy to cut, Laurent Bladekeeper, but I think these are good to actually stay. I think our final cut here is actually just going to be this Green Fang Warden. We'll keep all of the bottom end of our curve, and this should be okay. I think I'm happy with where this deck stands now as this kind of unit boosting, rally-based, combat-centric deck. I think we're in a good space here. So let's go back, cut the... what's your name? What's your name, friend? Where'd you go? Not the Royal Decree. Cut the Green Fang Warden out of our deck. We'll call it a day with deck number 2. All right, on to the third draft. What do we get here? Bard Part 2, Freylord Part 2. Can't do anything with those, and so we will be jumping into P and Z. See what turns up with these bros, and that should be a pretty easy Noxus pairing. There's not too much that I want to do with P and Z and Bilgewater. And then we've already drafted Bandle City. And so we're going to be just looking to draft some kind of really face aggro-y style deck with this. There are a lot of synergies if you can get the card creation things coming together, like the Riven Reforges. There's, of course, a lot of things like you would see in Draven Scion with the discard elements and Boom Baboon style cards. It's just going to be a matter of what actually turns up. But I think the kind of consistent thing here is going to just be an aggro deck. And so we're going to look to pick up our early game champions. We're going to look to pick up Overwhelms from Noxus, and then we're going to try and find burn spells out of PNZ. And then we'll see if we can't get any sweet combos after that. And so this is a fairly interesting set. I'm actually half tempted to come in and take the Teemo. But I think the safer choice at the end of the day is going to be the Caitlyn. It's like, how all in do we really want to be in terms of getting aggressive? And I feel like Teemo is going to be like a little bit over the edge, but I kind of feel like with these draft formats, everybody's kind of new to the format. And having a big aggro deck is something that's going to be powerful. And so it's tough passing on the Teemo. I think Caitlyn's going to be strong enough here at the end of the day. The Flash Bomb traps are exceptionally good in limited formats, and so the Caitlyn should be fine. And then if we stack our Caitlyns, she flips into Piltover Peacemakers, which are quite strong as well. Okay. So pretty easy Draven. This is just one of the premier aggro champions, and more so than being an aggro champion, he does build in to a lot of the synergistic things, the discard strategies and the created card strategies. He kind of does it all. All right. I see the Riven. Like I really enjoy picking up the those aggro card generation strategies, but I'm actually going to come over and take the Annie here. We're getting kind of stacked into our 3-cost champions, and I'm not really convinced that we're going to see a lot of the Reforged cards, whereas Annie is just going to be generally good. Okay, pretty easy Teemo here. Nice 1-drop action. Ooh, more Teemos. That's got to be Teemo time. We should have taken that first one, right? So we could have 3. It's okay. And then we'll finish off with our second copy of Draven. And so, yeah, a nice little aggro set of champions. Seeing stuff like this is what worried me a little bit, though. We're never going to be playing Glorious Evolution. Wild Claws is kind of turdy. Shock Blast will work in an aggro style deck. It's just a little bit more expensive than I was wanting to start with. Okay, can't imagine we'll actually play any of these. We'll pick up the Scorched Earth. It has some usage in these early aggro decks if we say play a House Spider and then deal a little bit of damage up, but we'd typically rather have something like Noxus Blast or something that just deals damage, or even like Nox and Guillotine. This is pretty low quality in the Scorched Earth. Captain Farron's not low quality, though. We will take 2 or 3 copies of Captain Farron and be super happy about all of them. All right, on to the next one. pretty weak set of cards. I can't imagine wanting to play a Basilisk Bloodseeker. Just a little bit too slow. I'm actually leaning towards this Scrapdash Assembly, but I mean, we'll realistically never play it. I'm just going to go in with Shumpo to pick up the rally. Fairly weak set of cards. Well, more burn in the Shock Blast. Not coming together how I wanted. Not coming together. So here, I think I got a kitty. Hang on. First of all, we got the kitty showing up. He says, "What up, internet? I'm here. I'm here for the drafts." But let's pick up the Legion Marauder. I do like having Might. It's kind of odd with Might, given that a lot of your cards tend to already have Overwhelm. But I think we just need the units at this point, just to be sure. At the end of the day, I would rather have good units than have the good spells. So here, Black Rose Spy, just a reasonable 2-drop. We're never going to get enough Kyrie and Sump Workers to get a flip, so that should be a pretty easy take. Wow, these are bad. These are bad. Wow. Okay. I guess the Crush Bot it is. That's the only one that's ever realistically playable. Fairly easy Legion Marauder out of these. Okay. Now that we've picked up 2 Legion Marauders, do we ever find ourselves trying to play Legion Deserters? Maybe. I think that's a maybe. We don't want Atacan. We already have Captain Farron. Amateur Aeronaut can work. It has, elusive, but I think we're going to get pretty easily stacked in our 3s. We've already got Caitlyn, Double Draven, 2 Legion Marauder, and so we don't need too much in the way of 3-drops. Let's just go with the Legion Deserter and see if this Legion Marauder theme actually comes together. Okay, fairly easy take here in the Ballistic Bot. It's right on point with the burn theme that we were trying to pull off. Maybe, hear me out. We play the Practical Imperfectionist just as a means to copy in more Legion Marauders. I'm not gonna do that, but it's it's a something to think about. All right, no drop orders. I guess we could play drop order as a 1, but that sounds pretty meh. We'll just pick up Shiraza the Blade. I doubt we'll end up playing her either, but we gotta fit something in here. The Electro Rig is fine. Not great, but the 6-stat 3-drop. This has been a painful one. This has been painful. So let's see. I'm leaning towards the Fallen Reckoner out of these. We do need to manage our curve a little bit in the top end. I think if it was something cheap, we would just go after the cheap cards. That's what we really need at this point. But Thermogenic Beam is a tough pass. But I think the Reckoner is just on point with picking up the good units. Okay, finally some 1s. Now, do we want to go for the value package with the Urchin? What can we use with it? We have Ballistic Bot, 2 copies of Draven, and that's it as far as generated cards. I think we'll just go with the Blade Squire. We don't have too many combos with the Reforges. It's just Draven right now, but hopefully it can get us there. Now, I'm kind of okay with Captive Yetis. I don't think we're going to have a very easy time activating the Reputation, but the big late game Overwhelm closers are what I would like to be finding. We would prefer this to be like an Armored Elephant, but it just kind of is what it is at this point. We have to have something fit in here. Fairly weak set of cards. We'll just take the Legion Veteran. Nothing wrong with a Bull Elnick. Coming from here, I don't think we'll have the time to play the Chief Mechanist Zevi. I'm just going to go with the Ruined Reckoner as a hopefully potential game closer. All right, a bunch of turds. I'm going to take the Daring Poro. I can't imagine we ever want to play this, but Retired Reckoner we don't have targets for. The Assembly's trash. This thing's got elusive. That counts for something, right? Oh man, what a deck. Here, this is a pretty easy Glory Seeker. Just a premier early play and a deck that needs something in the early game. Happy enough to pick up a Reckless Trifarian. We do have a ton of 3s, but he's going to be better than the Perfectionist. He handles combat well. Fairly easy Savage Reckoner here. He's just part of that big late game package that we're looking for. Now, it's not that bad. All right, we just need to find some early ways to fill out our curve, and I feel like this will be fine. So here, going to go with the Sumpworks map. Nice way to close out a game. Okay, then Runeweaver turns up. Beautiful. Perfect kind of early game play. These cards here all suck. I have lots of things to say about Insightful Investigator if we were still playing Expedition, but that's not a thing anymore. I think we just have to go with the Greyback since it has Overwhelm. It's not a card I want to play, but it's at least a little bit on theme. Very easy Legion Grenadier. Ooh, Kato the Arm. Beautiful, beautiful. That's a very easy take. This is the exact kind of top end we're looking for. And our top end is starting to look decent, right? We have the Fallen Reckoner and Kato at 5, the Yeti at 6, the Savage Reckoner at 7, Captain Farron at 8. We're pretty good at the closing out the top end. We just need to fill out our 1s and our 2s, and then hopefully we can find some like Mystic Shot style burn spells to close this out with. Okay, not amped about a Boom Crew rookie, but it's on theme and we need the curve filler. All right, back to the turds, huh? Back to the turds. I think we can take the Roar of the Slayer. It functions okay in limited formats, as everybody tends to play curve decks. If you're playing off curve and being really aggressive and you're getting to trade up a little bit, and then it gets to say being turn 5, your opponent plays a 5-drop, you play a 2-drop, and then get to kill like their 3 or their 4 or their 5. It works out pretty reasonably. I'm not sure if it's going to be something that makes the cut, but Stress Test and Mimic are never going to make it. All right, do we ever want this Rising Spell Force? We don't have any combat tricks at this point. I would like to have something. I don't really want Rising Spell Force, but we have to have some kind of interactivity here. And I feel like we can probably pick up one more expensive card like Savage Reckoner. I don't really want to be playing 2 copies of him. So that's a nice addition. Elixir of Wrath and Suit Up. The Suit Up is better in decks that have a bunch of cycle and card draw and elusives. That's not what we're doing here. I'm just going to go with the Elixir of Wrath as kind of the pseudo burn spell. Right. Probably not playing any of these. The Submersible can make the cut. It is elusive. A 5/5 elusive for 5 is a nice game closer. So we'll give it a shot. Incisive Tactician. We unfortunately didn't pick up the LeBlanc half of things. We passed on LeBlanc, and then I don't think we're going to be able to get good usage out of it, right? We don't have a whole lot of the 5 attack matters kind of theme, but maybe it'll be okay. I'm leaning towards just picking up this Drakehound. We don't have combos with it either, but I'm a little bit worried about our curve. Just the downside with the Drakehound is it may not be able to attack on the second turn, right? If you don't have a 1-drop to go with it. Okay, I'll take the Drakehound. I don't know about that one. That one's tough. Brothers Bond here is a pretty easy take, though. We don't have the burn component to play Progress Day. We don't have the discard component for Lost Soul, and so the damage based here is going to be good. All right. Don't have any discard effects to make the Clump of Wumps particularly strong, and so I'm just going to go with the Eager Apprentice out of these. Ooh, more Kato the Arm. Excellent, excellent. Happy enough with that. So we do at least have some good cards in here. We have the Kato Shiraza deck, right? This is a classic from the AI, if you will, where you give Shiraza Overwhelm. You people that play Path of Champions are probably familiar with this, and so that's what we'll be assembling here. We're going to do Kato Shiraza Rising Spellforce OTK. That's what this deck is all about. Okay, I'm on board. Here's a Decimate to go along with the burn theme. Thorn of the Rose is the best out of these. We already have Shunpo and probably won't play it. Coming over here, can we activate a Basilisk Rider? I mean, it's a fairly easy cut for a lot of our PNZ, but like we're definitely going to be playing 2 copies of Teemo and then 2. It's only 1 copy of Caitlyn. So that's at 3. I just don't think the Prefect is ever going to work. And then the Lady of Blood is off theme. Well, it's just the best card here. We'll come back in the deck building and see if that works out. Battering Ram is a reasonable closer. Unfortunately, we don't have like rally combos for it, but that will have to be okay. Forge Chief is way better than the Boom Crew Rookie. A nice early game 1-drop for us. And our last one, definitely not definitely not the 1-drops we're looking for. So let's just go with the Poro Cannon. Nice aggressive little unit there. And there we have it. So let's get ourselves over into the deck building. Okay, and so the wild card combo deck of the mix here, right? If you're not familiar with the Shiraza combo, if I glossed over it just a little bit too much during the draft phase, you can take Shiraza the Blade. She deals double damage to the Nexus. You can give her Overwhelm from her boyfriend Kato the Arm. They're totally going out. That's what it says on the splash screens if you haven't been paying attention. But Shiraza the Blade with the Overwhelm attack should be pretty close to killing our opponent, right? She deals double damage to the Nexus. Especially so if we get her boosted up with an Elixir of Wrath or with a +4 attack with a Rising Spell Force. We're looking to just end the games very quickly like that. And so this kind of classic Noxus P and Z aggro deck didn't quite come together. But it still has a lot of the kind of concepts and ideas that would work with that style of deck, right? We have some early game aggression. We can set up and then use that aggression to set up OTKs. And so our OTK doesn't necessarily have to be through the Shiraza combo. It can't just be with our big late game overwhelms. It can be with, say, putting an overwhelm on a 5-power unit, right? So Trifarian Glory Seeker, Thorn of the Rose, whatever. We have a lot of units that function quite nicely with that additional power coming through from Kato and punching in. I think the question that we're going to really find ourselves asking is, do we feel comfortable with playing these elusives, right? Do we need the likes of Poro Cannon and Daring Poro as a way to finish off these games? And until we get to the final cuts, I won't really know, but I feel like at this stage, we're probably going to want them. And so as we go through and cut out these cards, I'm going to take out these spells that don't directly play to our theme, right? I'm not really looking to build a balanced deck here. I'm not looking for, okay, here's the mana curve I want, and I want 3 combat tricks and 4 removal spells and 5 1-drops and 6 2-drops. We're not doing that. We're saying, does this card help us win the game with the Shiraza combo? And if it does, it's going to make the cut. If it doesn't, then it's not. And so cards like Shunpo, Scorched Earth, Roar the Slayer are not going to make it. Our combat tricks are going to make it. Things like Shock Blast and Decimate are going to make it as well. We're just looking at the Shiraza thing as kind of a burn style concept. And then as we look at our units out here, if it doesn't have Overwhelm up in the top end, I'm not going to play it. I should not include Submersible in that. We'll probably play Submersible with the Elusive, but things like Ruined Reckoner, Legion Veteran, not really interested in these bros that don't have Overwhelm to begin with. And so let's go ahead and jump back in. We can make some easy cuts with this really quick. I think if we scroll down to Expensive Land, we wanted to take out, where are you at? Not so yet with just Captive Yeti. Shunpo can go, Deserter can go. You have Overwhelm. Ruined Reckoner. I thought in my brain piece a little bit that, maybe we try to assemble these giant OTKs where we attack with Shiraza twice. It's like, no, that game should already be done with. And so let's get rid of Ruined Reckoner, Captive Greyback Basilisk Rider. I did look at the Basilisk Rider in terms of numbers of cards, and I don't think it's ever going to hit its ability, whatever it's called. It's allegiance. And so we'll cut that one out. Going to go ahead and hang on to Legion Veteran for the moment, just as kind of a matter of a curve. Probably cut it out because Shiraza is a 4-drop as well, but I think it can go. Scorched Earth out, or the Slayer out. Then as we come back up here, the bottom end of our curve, I don't really want to trade out too much of. Things like Boom Crew Rookie, while not great, still kind of work on theme. Obedient Drake is probably a little bit too challenging to work with. Pretty excited about Sumpworks map. You can still Sumpworks map a Shiraza, load her up with a combat trick, and win without Kato. So that one's going to stay. And now I think our 3-drops are where the remaining questions are going to go. And so I'll switch this back over to the a little bit easier to see view. And we'll come up to the 3s and talk about them a little bit more. I think I'm happy enough having the single 4-drop in here in our Legion Veteran, right? Yeah, we only have the single 4. I think our curve looks pretty okay. We could consider like cutting a 6, but like the 4 5s, 2 6, 1 7, 1 8, I think is going to be okay. And I think we need it because our opponents are going to get ahead on board, and then we just have to try and end the game with an Overwhelm. So I'm happy with that up there. Over here in the 3-drop space, though, right, we have 11 3-cost cards in our deck. We need to cut that down just a little bit. 8 of those are units. If we discount the Rising Spell Force, or I guess 9 of those are units if we just discount the Rising Spell Forces. And the question is, do we want things like Legion Marauder, or would we rather have things like Golden Crushbot? That looks so weird. Why is that? We have 11 3s, right? We've got 2 Rising Spell Force. Seems like I'm missing something. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Missing something? Why does it say we have 11? Oh, our champions. There we go. The Caitlins and the Dravens. Those are never getting cut. But do we want the kind of like safer routes with the Electro Rigs and the Golden Crush bots? The idea being they can just shut down the board for a little bit, right? If we say, okay, well, we're not pounding through our opponent's board. They've been playing a bunch of like Yordle Squires and shit, and we just can't get a board advantage. Then do we want to stall with these meaty units and then count on our big overwhelms to close out the game? Or do we want the kind of high risk, high reward factor of these Legion Marauders? And I think we're just going to cut the Legion Marauders out. Like just playing a 3-drop and trading it with our opponent's 1 or 2 is not going to feel good. And I think I can kind of make a justification for this defensive style play that's going to turn up. And so I think that'll be okay. We'll cut out the Legion Marauders, fixes our curve just a little bit, and then says, okay, if the aggro strategy doesn't pan out, we have some stall as a means to get our big overwhelms online. I think I'm pretty on board with that. And so that will do it. Let's come in. Legion Marauders, you are about to go. Where are you at, friends? You've been removed from the deck, and that is going to do it. Oh, got to save the name. Fix the name up properly, and then we'll call it a day. And so those are the decks. Those are the drafts. That's what we're going to be doing battle with, kind of as a, look onto this at a global sense. I think it's got to be okay. I'm trying to like convince myself that we can win a game with the Kato deck, because that's what it's going to come down to. I think, at the end of the day, everyone's going to ban our Bard deck. I think our Poppy deck is strong enough to hold its own against anything, and it's going to be, can we manage with this deck, and how much removal are we going to run into? If we're just playing against people that can't interact with us, we're going to smash the shit out of them, right? If your deck doesn't have interactivity and you're playing against the Kato Shiraza combo, you're going to get nuked. But it's just kind of depends on how I guess experienced of drafters we're dealing with here. I would say that's pretty high, right? If you're going out of your way to draft in a league that isn't a function of Riot, then you probably have done a draft or two in your day, and to value the removal a little bit higher. But it doesn't mean that you can't run into decks without a ton of interactivity. This one, case in point, right? The only interactivity we have in this deck here is the 2 Shock Blasts and like 1 Challenger, and so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I'm curious to see how the games pan out. And in the next video, I'm going to get some practice games in with the AI for this. And then once we've got a couple practice games in against the AI, we'll have the videos coming up with our actual opponents. And so that is going to do it for us today. Hope everyone enjoyed the video. You learned a thing or two along the way and had a good time watching. This is Bust, and we thank you for being here.